Hey, welcome everybody. It is Sci-Fi Distilled. I got the idol. All right, we're going to bring in our rest of our group. And we got Mary Beth, and of course, Roy, a.k.a. The Fonz.
Hey.
Mary Beth is, of course, Hermione. And Ross as Hagrid. We got a whole Harry Potter and leather jacket. Like a whole leather jacket and Harry Potter thing.
Well, happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween. So, how are you guys all doing? I hope you're having a good and safe October, getting ready for the next onslaught of holidays.
I know, we're in the fourth quarter. This is crazy. Where did the time go?
Yeah, it's going to be Christmas.
Christmas is less than 2 months.
Yeah.
As nauseating as that is. What happened? So we are, of course, this is and we're on our show for a change. Usually we're on Roy and Ross's show for the Halloween special, but we thought this timed out a little better. So here we are. We are doing a very old movie, but a classic nonetheless. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. We have some great Universal monsters in this film, but before we get to that, I think Mary Beth has some.
I just have a little bit of news. Side note, guys, tonight is October 30th. 86 years ago today, on October 30th, 1938, Orson Welles narrated the H.G. Wells classic War of the Worlds. A lot of people like to report that caused widespread panic. Modern historians are like, no, actually, no. There's no evidence that people were like fleeing their homes or anything like that. It was 1938. We were coming out of the Depression. I don't know that people had cars and stuff like that to like drive away or anything. So, but I think they were all appropriately terrified the way you are at like, say, a horror movie or something. So moving on with the news tonight, Star Trek fans everywhere are really saddened to hear that Jeri Taylor has passed at the age of 86. Hers was a name that we saw every single week in those closing credits. Actually, she was sometimes in the opening credits too. Jeri Taylor was an American television scriptwriter and producer. She wrote a whole bunch of episodes of Star Trek Next Gen and Star Trek Voyager. Before she did Star Trek, she did scripts for Little House on the Prairie, The Incredible Hulk, Quincy, Jake and the Fat Man, if you guys remember any of those shows. Taylor joined Next Gen. She was like a supervising producer and then worked her way up to be co-executive producer and showrunner. And she did a bunch of episodes that you guys will all know and recognize. Like Will Wheaton's final episode was Final Mission, which introduced the Cardassians. She did Deep Space Nine, The Wounded. She did Unification, which we all know is the one that had Spock in it. And the script she said she is the most proud of was The Drumhead, which is a really, really popular one. So she will be missed. And then finally tonight, another sad passing to report, Terry Garr. Terry Garr has passed at the age of 79 after a long battle with multiple sclerosis. She started her career in the early 60s as a dancer for Elvis. She was in 9 Elvis films, which I didn't know that. That's crazy, yeah. And then she had her breakthrough. Well, she did a bunch of stuff, but then she got to appear in Star Trek as Roberta Lincoln in she was Gary Seven's like
Time on Earth.
Yeah.
Which was going to be a spin-off. That was going to be supposed to be
that was a backdoor pilot. Yeah.
They ought to bring that back. Now there's an idea they could bring back. And
they really should. Yeah. She wanted to do a whole bunch of stuff. She was in The Monkey's Head, which I don't know if you guys know the story on that movie, but that's a whole story right there. Tootsie, Close Encounters, Young Frankenstein.
Come on now.
Your favorite movie, Rizzo, Let It Ride.
Let It Ride. Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, she was everywhere, and she will be missed.
Yeah. So
what, Rizzo, are we drinking tonight? While we talk about Abbott and Costello.
The jack-o'-lantern, very, I did embellish the drink. I put the face on the glass. That is pretty much the length of my artist ability is right. Artistic. That's it. I can make little shapes on a glass. Cognac, brandy-based orange liqueur, orange juice, ginger ale. Really not a bad drink.
Is orange and not pumpkin? Okay. I thought you were going to do something pumpkin-y, pumpkin spice.
Haven't we had enough pumpkin spice? I mean, really? Is that one of the Spice Girls? Is that like the chubby one?
Yeah, it's the chubby. Pumpkin spice. I like pumpkin spice.
I know it's
And
a thing. Oh, yeah, I get it. I think they just overdo it. Everything.
Hello, everybody. Jeff's here. Chris is
here. Anyway,
here.
yeah. Hey, Chris, Bill, how you doing? Thanks, Jeff, for joining us. So we have this movie, 1948. I actually saw this as a kid, not in 1948, but I did see it in the 70s. It used to be, I think, in the afternoons. I don't remember seeing it. It's probably one of the only, as a small child, the only monster movie I think I would watch. Because I think one of the draws of this film, it is the classic monsters, but it's not scary. So you get to kind of enjoy those characters in a non-scary movie. Of course, any of those Universal movies from the 30s really aren't scary. But
I feel like I saw this like maybe on Creature Double Feature.
Yeah, it was on like in the afternoon or something. But I know I remember seeing it as a kid.
Channel 11 WPIX out of New York City used to run Abbott and Costello on Sunday afternoons, and it was. We used to visit my grandparents on Sundays. We'd get there around like 11 o'clock in the morning, and my grandfather would actually have Abbott and Costello on in the background. And also, if you remember the Bowery Boys, that was also going on. And it was almost like and the crazy thing is, this was like in the 70s. So 1978, 79, this film came out in 1948. So that time it was only 30 years back.
Yeah. But it's interesting. We got exposed to so many very old things that were not even made. That were in some of like the Little Rascals. Okay, like those were like from like what the 30s and 20s. I mean, they brought those back and kind of remastered them a little bit to watch because there wasn't a lot of reruns.
Yeah.
To show, so they were going really back in the well for a lot of this stuff to show, so that they could get away with until like things like Star Trek and Lost in Space and all those shows from the 60s became old enough and then we got exposed to those in the 70s as well. Yeah. So yeah, it was a fun movie, and it's not one that they wanted to make. At least Lou Costello didn't want to make. He did not want to make. In fact, he thought it was horrible. In fact, they had to wait $50,000 in front of him.
Oh, more than that. He was like, my 5-year-old daughter could write a better script.
Right. I think it was a $50,000 advance.
And the director of his choice.
And the director, which was Charles Barton, which had done his other films. So that was definitely but the fact they got together almost all of the original Universal monsters with the exception of Boris Karloff. They got Lugosi and they got Lon Chaney Jr. So
Boris was concerned. He thought it would damage, like he didn't want to damage the character's legacy. Which I mean, I get it. Like it would be a huge
the character's legacy of that you couldn't tell. I don't know. I couldn't tell the difference between him and Lon Chaney and the actor. I forget his name at the top of my head.
Glenn Strange. Yeah. So Karloff retired from the character after Son of Frankenstein anyway. So that was several films ago. And then everybody played him. Lon Chaney played him in a movie. Bela Lugosi played him in a movie, and then Glenn Strange, this is the third time he played him.
And actually, in this movie, in one shot, it's the shot where he's throwing the girl out the window. That was actually Lon, because Glenn had twisted his, there's cables laying around in a studio. He had stepped on one wrong and twisted his ankle or something. So that was actually Lon Chaney Jr. doing that. But yeah, you're right. He was the only one. But then I think he did do promotion for this film. Boris did. He did do promotion for this film, and then he did go ahead and do a film with Abbott and Costello after this. So I think he realized, okay, it seems to be working out. Okay.
He did 2 films with Abbott and Costello. He did Abbott and Costello meet Boris Karloff, the killer, and then, or the killer Boris Karloff, and he did Abbott and Costello meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Right. And the funny thing about Boris Karloff is that he did not want to be the monster, but what he did agree to do was publicity photos where he was in New York purchasing a ticket at the theater that was showing it. But he just said, I'll do that as long as you don't, force me to be in the movie, because he just didn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
This film really helped Abbott and Costello as far as almost like revitalizing them, because they were kind of at a low point, and it was something that really, I guess it was, in regards to budget wise, it was a very low, inexpensive compared to the movies that Universal was doing. And it turned out to be the second largest grossing movie of 1948. So it definitely Universal.
Yeah, and it was one of the cheapest for Universal to make.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said that, but it was one of the cheapest for Universal to make, and it was one of their highest grossing films that year.
Hi, Dr. Alexander. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Universal was at their low point, and they had actually released all their almost all of their contracted performers, except for Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, and just a handful of others. They were the only ones they retained, and then they made this movie, and it did bring them back. I feel like we should give a little background on Abbott and Costello, and then a little background on the Universal monsters. These really are two very, to me, disparate, like very separate and different worlds. And the fact that they were like, let's throw these together, and it worked. That's kind of a small
I didn't realize until doing a little bit of research that there was such a separation in time between when the Universal monster phase of Universal kind of ended, and then this movie was made. And I guess one of the reasons was that the censors were becoming more active, and horror movies were becoming harder. People didn't. I guess they felt they weren't going to get through the censors; they were too scary or something. So this was a way, kind of around it, in a little way that was kind of fun and silly.
These movies did get the studio through like the Great Depression.
Well, this movie in particular was heavily cut and Baudelarized and even banned in some countries, believe it or not. It just shows how desensitized we've become. Yeah. But they cut out all the Wolfman scenes when they showed it in Canada. Finland, it was banned. They wouldn't show it at all. They had to cut out all the monster scenes for Australia. It's
which makes it make no
sense. I would love to see that cut, because
but I think they retitled it too. They changed the title. I think even in the UK there was some editing of the monsters as well, and I think they even called it Abbott and Costello Meets the Ghosts. I think. Yeah,
you're right. And we're so desensitized, it's like now, you chop people's heads off on screen,
Well, it's just almost G-rated by today's standards.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I grew up with the monsters. My mom and I used to watch these monster movies out of New York, all the classic ones, the Frankenstein movies, Dracula, Wolfman, Invisible Man. And I wasn't even 5 years old yet. So I was like weaned on this stuff.
Right.
And then the Abbott and Costello movies, whether you liked it or not, they were always on Sunday in our area, down in the New York area. So I saw all of those things. They're not my favorite team, but I think they're a classic team. You got Bud Abbott, who's the slick, fast talking guy who's always getting either ignores Lou or he gets Lou in trouble.
He's kind of straight man, sort of.
Yeah, he's the straight man, and Lou's the comic.
Lou of the two of them, I like Lou better. Lou was a little more relatable.
Well, especially
although he tended to do the same shtick in every single. Like they realized he did really good scare. Like he did that no voice, like making the sound but no voice. I'm scared thing. So they would use that in every movie. They had their shtick down, but those guys were like legends in the entertainment industry. They had done stage, they had done radio, they had done TV, they had done movies.
Interestingly enough, apparently what I was reading was during the making of this film, they were like just not show up for like days because they were kind of boycotting things that they didn't like, and then they would like set up a card table on the set and just start playing cards for like days, like they wouldn't do any work.
They had a lot.
Apparently, there was pie fights break out.
Yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans.
They had a lot of status, and they made a lot of money. They actually, I guess, in the 30s too, in regards to selling bonds, government bonds. 40s. That was something that in the 40s during World War II. Excuse me. They had helped with that, and they were very widely known, very popular. And as Mary Beth was saying, they did theater, burlesque. And they were both from New Jersey too. They're both of them from Paterson, New Jersey, was Lou Costello, and then Asbury, New Jersey, was Bud Abbott.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say they were everywhere. We watch these movies and say, "Wow, they made a lot of movies." But the whole time they were making movies, they were on the radio. They had a weekly radio show. They came up through burlesque. They got the radio show. They started making movies. And then by the early 50s, they had their own television show, and they were rerunning that when we were kids too.
Yeah.
So it's like, they were really overexposed.
Yeah, they probably were. They only, like I said, they did reuse gags, and maybe the gags were kind of getting old. But Bud Abbott was apparently a replacement for whoever Lou had been working with, and it just clicked. They realized, okay, this works. But I just wanted to point out they mastered that really rapid fire, because you didn't see that rapid fire stuff a lot in the 40s and the 50s. Everything was kind of, people were very measured in the way they spoke on film, but they would do this rapid fire, deliberate misunderstanding. And the most that would go on and on. The most famous of those is, of course, Who's on First. And that actually, there's a plaque to that in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Like, they are not in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but the skit is.
Yeah.
So everybody knows who's on first.
They're
I think that's if you've never heard of them, you know that.
You should know it, yeah.
A few people that have actually immortalized in the Baseball Hall of Fame without being actually baseball players, and they actually run a constant video of that, and it's pretty memorable when you think about it.
Yeah.
Actually, the comedies in the 30s and 40s, especially the 30s, they did speak very rapidly. If you ever watch, with His Girl Friday with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell, it's just like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
they're very sassy.
And you gotta be sharp because sometimes they're pretty smart in the comedy. But I really prefer it. I don't know why we got into this slowed down, kind of measured way of speaking. I don't know how that happened. But
well, people were more clever.
TV history. Yeah, maybe.
And you had
I don't think you're wrong there, Ross. I think we've gotten to the point where we're so worried trying to make a deep statement that we lose the focus on something just being fun and there's been whole articles about I don't know if I always thought it was because I was getting old, but do you find yourself putting subtitles on a lot of these TV shows and movies?
I do
understand. And there was actually an article where it's not you, it's them. It's it's the newer version of acting. Is this more? They're not enunciating. They're not.
I was going to say I used to blame it on the accent.
They're kind of mumbling, and apparently it drives the audio people that have to do all the sweetening and all this stuff with the fixing it, and they can't because it's like these people need to speak up.
Dude, nobody does ADR anymore. Like, re-record those
there was
lines.
actually a good article. I think Mike Okuda had posted a while back. It was really good. I'm like, oh my god, I thought it was me the whole time. I just couldn't. I was turning to my father. I couldn't hear anything.
I admit it. I watch with the subtitles on all the time.
Makes it a lot easier.
like Mary Beth said, they came up through the stage, through burlesque, and a lot of those actors that were in the old movies came up on the stage, which is why when Boris Karloff speaks or when Bela Lugosi speaks, I mean, they articulate everything that they say. Even Bela Lugosi with his accent is very. I know Boris Karloff wasn't in this movie, but I'm just saying as a for instance because I'm watching a lot of those movies in this season, for Halloween.
Yeah. And we hear Vincent Price at the end, and they all had that nice level mid-Atlantic accent, very comprehensible. Not almost sounds British, but really not British. It's got that really nice.
The Katharine Hepburn sound.
The Katharine Hepburn sound.
Vincent Price, right. Yeah. I just watched Invisible Man Returns with Vincent Price too. So that's why they had him in this movie, because he played him in the second film.
They were going to bring the Mummy in, but for some reason they decided not to, and I don't know why, because that would have really brought everything full circle, so to speak. Even though the Invisible Man was only in there for like 10 seconds.
Yeah, as a punchline.
Yeah. It was a nice little, but then of course it led to, it was almost like a Marvel movie at the end, where it leads to the next one.
Yeah.
Well, this was maybe the first ever cinematic universe. Like the Universal Watchers were the first ever cinematic universe.
Oh yeah. As soon as he started crossing all these guys over, right?
Yeah.
And that's why
it really was a whim. Like, I don't think there was any plotting or planning. I think it was literally a whim. Like, I like those guys. I like those guys. Let's put them together.
Right.
Pull something together. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
No. But it's so true. They were going through. They did Frankenstein. They did Dracula. They did the Invisible Man, and then after a while, somebody said, "Well, let's start mixing up the Wolfman and Frankenstein's monster and Dracula." And that's exactly at the point that the Abbott and Costello movie came along. They had done several pictures like that with the monsters, and then they said, "Well, let's mix the the comedy with the," and that, I mean, that's a great tradition that even precedes Abbott and Costello. I mean, how many horror and comedy combinations have we seen? Even today, they do that.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. Yeah.
Yeah, we love to see. What's that?
We did the Alien versus Predator.
Yeah, well, was that well, I guess they were comedies unintentionally, perhaps.
They were, yeah.
But I mean, Ghostbusters, and I mean, they still do it. Yeah, everybody loves to see some goofballs, and you laugh at the horror,
Yeah. So this movie, plot-wise, I gotta say, maybe no great shakes there, but I gotta say, I really enjoyed some of the performances. Lon Chaney, I really enjoyed him, and I was just surprised at how much I was like, oh, I think I need to go watch more.
Watch more Wolfman.
Yeah,
he was really the straight man in this whole film. When you think about it, he was the one he was the only one
he really was.
I'm trying to stop this, and nobody's listening to me.
He was the only one who was actually trying to help.
He was trying to do something.
He was the original American Werewolf in London.
I just of the bunch of them, I never got the hang of Abbott, but I do enjoy Costello. I like him. He's
Costello's just more fun. I mean, he's more relatable, I think, and
more relatable. And some of the stuff he does, I was like, wow, that's so modern. Like you still do that to this day.
Yeah,
like,
Some of the asides and stuff.
Yeah.
They were saying the scene where he sits in the monster's lap.
Yeah.
And he doesn't realize he's doing it. And of course, I guess that took, I don't know, many takes because he kept cracking up the actor there.
Glenn Strange.
Yeah, Glenn Strange, because he kept ad-libbing and being silly, and he was just like they couldn't get it shot because he kept cracking up. So you could kind of see that. I think there's a lot of Lou Costello, the person that we see in those. You know what I'm saying? I don't know for a fact, but I suspect he's pretty silly in person. I mean, the fact they had pie fights.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I want to see Bela Lugosi get hit in the face with a pie. I think.
Yeah.
That was the thing, though. They had an on-set comedian. You see him in the film. He has like one line. The little short bald guy. His name is Bobby Porter. He was just around just to kind of crack jokes and screw around kind of between takes. But Bella did not like that. If Bella was on camera, he was not having that. If Bella was off camera, he was all for it. He was like, let's watch these idiots.
It did say he only partook in the pie fight when he wasn't on set
when he wasn't
an actor. He was just there.
Yeah. But they wanted to keep the energy up between takes.
Which is and I totally get that. That is actually really, really hard to do the same thing over and over and over again and stop in between and then do it again and keep really big energy. Like I get that. So
there is actually several blooper reels of this movie on YouTube if you care. They're not, the quality is terrible.
Yeah.
Because they're like VHS copies of bad film copies, and it's just,
right.
But I mean, you kind of get the idea what was going on. I mean, it's pretty much like any film set where they just, they're going to mess up their line.
Bill Sotek is saying, I always felt Lon Chaney Jr. was ready to cry during his non-monster scenes. Yeah, he did bring a lot of pathos, maybe a lot of unnecessary pathos to the character.
They played him 5 times, the Wolfman. So this is the last time he plays the Wolfman, but he's played the Wolfman from the Wolfman forward and all those crossover films also. Yeah.
Well, he does do a very good job of bringing the pain of that character, his that he has this curse.
Right.
Yeah.
He conveys that really well, that he's a tormented person, that he's not.
Yeah, he has a really.
He's trying to do the right
thing.
thing.
He can put on that sad countenance and just he was good at that.
Yeah.
And what you said about Costello, you think he was maybe like that in real life? The reason that Bud Abbott was so respected in the industry is because he was one of the few guys that could really field anything that Costello threw out on the set. Because Costello would always improvise, and Abbott could always be counted on to catch it and bring it back to the script. When he died, Groucho Marx said he was the best straight man in the business. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody wanted to be, like Bud. If you had a team, you wanted to be like Bud Abbott.
He may well have been,
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think of other pairings, and there were tons of them back then. He may well have been the best straight man.
And he died at such a young age too. I mean,
Costello did,
Costello. I mean, Lou Abbott, or rather Bud Abbott died in, believe it or not, like 50 years ago already. It's crazy.
70s,
74, I think.
But they had a lot of personal tragedy in their lives, and
they did. I was reading Costello's son. It was after this movie or before this movie? I think it was before this movie. Costello's son had died, and he wasn't the same. Like for a long time, he was not the same man.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was interested. There's interviews with his daughter. His daughter has a bunch of interviews on YouTube if you guys are interested in checking those out. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how he got his mojo back, but apparently he was going through it there for a while.
He actually worked the day that the son died. He found out the son drowned, and they had a radio show that night. And he says, "I'm going to go." He says, "I want him to hear it no matter where he is." And he went on and did the show. And it wasn't until afterward that Abbott told everybody.
Oh my God! How was he not crying during his show?
I know. So he said it was like the ultimate example. The show must go on.
Right.
But because the son wasn't even a year old yet.
Yeah, it was little boy, really little boy. Yeah.
And he had a chronic heart problem that he picked up while touring during the war, World War II. So, I mean, that eventually killed him, I think, in the early 50s. But
he had rheumatic fever or something?
Yes. So he had that to deal with. Bud Abbott was he had what is it? The where you're subject to fits.
Epileptic.
Epileptic.
He was epileptic. Yeah, and he started to kind of self-medicate. And just like Bela Lugosi had sciatica, and he started to self-medicate. So this leads to addiction, and then it affects performances.
They didn't have the treatments we have nowadays.
Yeah, and then they had a big problem with the IRS. Once they got to the 50s, they owed all this back money to the IRS, and they had to sell all the rights to everything. But at their peak, they were making millions of dollars a year, which was like crazy for back then.
Yeah.
But they wound up losing it all in the 50s. So
I believe they both made $105,000 for this film. Let me see if I can translate that into today's.
Yeah, I believe when Costello died, he died pretty much broke.
Yeah, but they had multiple. They came out with multiple movies a year, and they would reissue the old movies, and the radio show was on. They had a little empire going there.
Yeah, like I said, they were all over the place. 105 in 1948, 1.3 million.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's a lot of money
for 1930s and 40s. Yeah, that was an insane amount of money.
Yeah,
and then they weren't getting along. There was a lot of friction between the team for a while. But what happened was Bud Abbott suggested to Lou that they name this charity that Lou had started after his infant son. Lou was so touched by that suggestion that they kind of patched it up, and because they made a couple of movies where they didn't really talk to each other.
They had shifted the amount of money that they were getting. It was like almost like a 60-40 split. Then it was a 50-50. And then it was 40-60.
Bud got paid more because he was the straight man. That was a tradition from burlesque.
But Lou's the one doing all the work and physical. It was very physical.
Well, speaking of that too, he was in high school. He was an athlete too, and he was. They said he was a very gifted athlete doing basketball. And you would think somebody that was only about 5'5", as far as playing, but he was noted for his his foul shots, always getting them. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing was there was another sport that he was.
He was a boxer.
Boxer, yes.
Oh, I could see him as a boxer. Yeah.
It's interesting because you look at him in these films, and he's definitely heavier than Abbott, but he's really not that heavy. You know what I'm saying? As far as he's not like, they kind of portray him as supposed to be this fat kind of dumb, but he's really not. When you look at his physique, he's really not that heavy.
No, he's kind of not. I mean, he's
a little stocky.
He's dad bod. He's dad bod. That's it.
and Abbott's really not that tall either, but it's just when you see the two of them together.
But speaking of the athleticism, that kind of makes sense because I know I was reading that and I noticed that it was Lou Costello who did kind of more of the not stunts, but more physicality in his performance. And there was one shot that I was reading where they just shut the door, and I want to say Frankenstein punches through the door, and Lou Costello deliberately, he knew where to stand, and he deliberately put his head, and he got punched. He did it on purpose. You see it in the movie. It's funny, like he just dings, and he's and they keep moving. But he just does a bunch of physical stuff.
It worked. Yeah.
Yeah, it worked.
He's lucky you didn't get knocked out.
Yeah. One of the things.
It was a stunt. I mean, it was a stunt punch through a.
Yeah. Still though, but if he didn't know he was punching into somebody's,
I guess if he didn't know he was punching into a head,
forced to it.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the
I was
things
on stage once doing a show, and the guy didn't pull his punch back, and he clocked me right, and it's not fun when a stunt goes, wrong like that. But exactly. But like,
they didn't have safety. Like there wasn't no safety. There was no stuntmen's unions back then. It was the Wild West of stunt work.
Mm-hmm. There's no health and safety or OSHA.
Yeah, there's no health and
safety. No OSHA on the sets to make
no safety officer on set. It's telling them to wrap it up because it was.
The show must go on.
Yeah. One of the things that amused me about Abbott and Costello is that Lou always breaks the fourth wall.
And he does in this movie too.
He'll make a remark sometimes, or sometimes he just looks at the camera.
He pulls that black cloth out from like he does the old,
Yeah, I like that. That was a laugh.
After he looks at the camera.
There's a few times I actually laughed out loud. Like it was funny enough. That was one of them when he pulls the And he's like, you could just almost hear Bill Murray say, and the flowers are
still standing.
Exactly.
That must be where they got that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Well, that trick's been around forever, but
yeah, that's true.
So and it's kind of like the Ernie and Bert relationship. I always love this. It's like, how are these guys like together? You know, they're in a hotel room. Cranky. Everywhere they go, they're together. You know, these movies.
Why did they even bother to make them Chick and Wilbur? Why didn't they just call them?
You just said that because I was thinking the same. It's like, why don't they just call them? You know,
why were they characters? They should have just.
I don't know why
because then they named the name of the movie was Abbott and Costello.
I know. They do that in comedy movies. They give the comedians regular names. It's funny. Yeah.
So they were ostensibly playing characters, but
I mean, the plot for those that don't know, the plot is very simple. Is that these two are working at a freight depot in Florida, of all places. I thought it was interesting. Like, why Florida? I don't know. Maybe. And they're receiving these two crates from England that have the monster, Frankenstein's monster, and Dracula in his coffin in these, and it's being shipped to a horror museum in Florida. And then, of course, Lon Chaney, the Wolfman there, is trying to stop. He knows that these things are being shipped. There's a whole plan to get the monster a better brain, which have we heard? We've seen this kind of before, haven't we? Or after this, we should say we saw this. Abby someone.
Well, I'm sure that Mel Brooks drew from it.
I'm sure he took
I mean, he parodied I always thought Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein. But he very definitely took from this also. I mean, come on, you were just waiting for the knocker line with that,
right? Well, that was one of the great things. He's like, every full moon, I turn into a wolf. So do 20 million other guys.
Yeah,
that was like the best line of the whole movie.
Yeah, but you had that, and then I had to think about put the candle back, because they had the whole thing with the revolving door, in the stone.
Yeah, that gag.
Anyway, I didn't mean to get you off your synopsis.
No, that's fine.
Go back to the synopsis.
Totally fine. So they of course. They do not intercept the crates. The monster and Dracula get out of their crates, but the point is that there's like there's that plot, and then there's a subplot where this woman, they want to take Costello's brain out and replace it with the monsters because they feel he'll be more docile and controllable. Although we didn't really see, this is the part I was like, but the Frankenstein monster never really acted independently. Like Bela Lugosi would say, "Come with me," and then he would do it. So I'm like, "You're already. What do you need to, what's going on there?"
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that was the subplot because he was so dim-witted and simple. That was the theory that he would, and of course, the woman was wooing him. This beautiful woman who's actually the scientist who's going to do this brain transfer thing. Who ultimately, I guess, gets turned into a vampire.
Essentially. I mean, she gets bit.
So here's the question: the guy that ran the horror museum, what was his name?
McDougal.
Is he technically a werewolf because he was injured by?
Right. Was he bit? A scratch, or was he bit?
Or was he bit? I don't know. Would you have to be bit? Some of these movies are scratches enough. I don't know.
Sequel. Need answers.
Yeah, I love the line that I love the line that Bud Abbott gives about Louis, because out of all the guys around here, that classy dish has to pick you, pick a guy like you or whatever. It's like, how much of that era is that classy dish?
Yeah. Well, he said something about a dame. She's a real dame, and he said, I mean the royalty or something like that.
Yeah. And then what was the other girl? She was the insurance
inspector.
Which I didn't realize monsters cared about insurance, but I mean, I guess maybe.
Well, no, it was again, she didn't realize. Because originally the bodies were missing because they got up and walked away.
Right.
So then the guy wanted his insurance money for the missing bodies. Right. And so the insurance company had to investigate. Very progressive having a female
insurance investigator.
Although it had to fit the plot because then of course she was after. There was the old adage of Costello had 2 dates for the costume party.
She was the last surviving member of the cast, and sadly, she passed away just a few years ago. And that was Jane Randolph. She did a movie though that was called Cat People in the 1942.
Oh yeah.
And then she also did the sequel to that, which was Curse of the Cat People. And I think Ross, you and I had talked about this a while ago.
I don't know, but Curse of the Cat People. That's your That's your Star Trek connection because Robert Wise directed that.
Oh,
wow.
Directed
that's
Star Trek
funny.
the motion picture.
That was the one with McDowell, right?
Who's that? Roddy McDowell?
Not Roddy, the son.
No, this was all the way back in the 40s.
yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I'm thinking of the more modern version that was like in the 80s.
Oh, Malcolm McDowell. You're thinking
Malcolm
of.
McDowell,
Yeah,
yeah.
they remade it with Nastasia Kinski. Yeah,
Nastasia Kinski, correct.
Right,
Yeah, that's the
right.
one. That's what I thought for a second. I'm like, that movie's not.
Yeah,
that
this one was 1942, but I didn't know that about Robert Wise though. That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
So
he directed. That was
degrees of
one of his early
separation.
movies.
Ooh, there's a bunch of girls in Curse the Cat people. Simone, Simon, Ann Carter,
Yeah, she
Elizabeth
was-
Russell, Jane Randolph, who we know, Julia Dean, Eve March, and then just a couple of guys. That's interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Val Lewton. Yeah, they're classics. Those are great movies for they don't not putting a lot of the terror on the screen. It's like kind of atmospheric, and then you wonder if it's like if the monsters are real or if it's their psychology.
Although you know what, this 1944 version is directed by Robert Wise.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's the sequel. That's Curse of the Cat People.
Yeah, I'm on Curse.
Yeah.
And 34 years later, he would go on to do Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
And Darren Dochterman's world would never be the same.
Yep.
All roads.
All roads, man.
All the
Yeah.
All
Right.
roads.
one of the interesting things I liked about this movie was the effect they used for Dracula turning into and from a bat.
Yes.
It was an animation that they would, but it really, I mean, it's obvious what it is, but considering when the movie was made, I thought it worked pretty well.
It
did. I'm like,
impressive.
and I was like, that's pretty good the way they did that, and I'm sure for an audience in 1948 that was very impressive.
Yeah, I'm very curious.
You know who
how
did it?
that fell.
Yeah, the
on
animator who did
1948.
Woody Woodpecker.
It was Walter Lantz. Yeah. Yeah, who was good friends with George Powell. George Powell, included a Woody Woodpecker supposedly in all his movies.
Now,
I've
did they
never
do that?
actually seen
They
them.
used the same effect for the original Dracula.
No,
No, I didn't think so.
they didn't have any animated.
So this might have been one of the first movies that had animation and live action.
The
mixed
actual
together.
transformation of Dracula. Let's Google the history of the transformation of Dracula.
And that first Dracula movie was what? 1931?
Yeah, it was the 30s, and in fact, this
Yeah.
is only the second time that Bela Lugosi actually played
Yeah.
Dracula, and it would be, of course, his last time, and it would be his last major film
for a major studio.
for
Yeah,
a major studio.
yeah.
We
Because he
won't
played a
count
vampire
Edward.
a number of times, but this is only the second time he played Dracula.
And let's not forget Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Well, that was
Exactly.
Ed Wood, and
Oh,
as
Ed
much as
Wood,
we
yeah.
love that movie
Oh.
Exactly.
in its own right,
But
it's so bad you have to love it.
you still may have to love it. But yes, this was. I don't know if this was the first time we actually saw Dracula transform into a bat or not. But yeah, I was impressed that they tried it, and I was actually really, really impressed with Lon Chaney. Like I was like, wow, they're going for it. Like I thought it would be, cut away and then cut back. Oh, he's a werewolf. Nope, they actually tried to go for it. They actually tried to make a progressive overlay of film
and
to make him look more and more.
that's another scene that I was kind of really scrutinizing to see and it did a really good job. They must have been very meticulous about putting his head back exactly where it was every time they put a
Maybe
level
they
of
did it
makeup
as
on
he
him,
lay
because
there.
it really did. You didn't see you'd think you'd see a little shift,
Yeah,
but you really didn't see it. And I thought they must have been very meticulous. I don't know how they pulled it off.
You know what that reminded me of a little bit too? And here's the Star Trek connection again. Miri, when the
very similar.
Yeah.
with the makeup or the disease.
Right. But even in those scenes, especially you see it even worse, I think, since we're off on a Star Trek tangent, in the Empath.
The Empath too.
Was the same when McCoy's things. But you could see the shift
Yes.
of his head slightly as it dissolved from cut to cut. In this one, it was much cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
It was very clean. Yeah.
It was much cleaner than the original Wolfman, which was still very good. But they simplified the makeup. They streamlined it for this. The real guy, the guy that used to do all the classic Universal pictures was named Jack Pierce, and apparently he was a very irascible guy, a very meticulous guy. But he'd get him in the chair, and it would take him hours to do the makeup. So what they did, Universal merged with the Rank organization, a British film company, and they got rid of like a lot of their employees. And I guess Jack Pierce he never had a contract. He was just like kind of a, freelance kind of thing. So they fired him, and because he was a pain in the ass, even though he did great work. But they got his assistant to come in, and what they did is they figured out how to do everything like in an hour.
Yeah, so they changed the foam rubber for some
right. So they streamlined it, but as Mike says, the transformations with the or maybe you said it, with the werewolf were just very seamless.
I was impressed they tried it. Like they actually went for it in a movie of this caliber. Like they could have cheated and skipped out on it, but they did it. Good for you guys. Bill Sochak is reminding us that they were using the Superman switch for Superman flying. I mean, the animation switch for Superman flying as early as the 30s. And yeah, I do remember that. I've seen that. So yeah, so I guess using the animation had been an established thing by then.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So how do you feel? I mean, I know you guys aren't like big Universal horror addicts, but is this canon or is this not canon? You know what I mean? Does this fit the Frankenstein cycle, or is it just like an addendum? You know what I mean?
Now that it's been how many years, it has to be canon. There's no two ways around it.
I mean, it is, I guess, because it's Universal monsters. It's not only it's even the same actors.
Yeah, it's the same actor. It's canon because the actors playing all the monsters parts of the movie and the actors, they're playing it straight. Like they were playing it like, this is our plan. We're going to get a new brain Frankenstein. That's what we're doing. Like if we took out all the Abbott and Costello stuff, maybe not the scariest one we've ever seen, but it was a regular monster movie.
I personally, I would say it's canon, but it doesn't really fit in with the other, because all the other films that came before, even though they're kind of seemed to be making them up as they went along, I mean, they'd have a self-contained film, but then the next one would just like pick up and then take it somewhere else, and the next one would pick up and take it somewhere else. There was really no transition from the House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula to this one. You know what I mean? Like suddenly everybody
took him to Florida, I guess.
Yeah, it's like suddenly, yeah.
So I thought it was interesting that I don't know why Florida. I guess maybe it was Florida like an up and coming thing. I don't know. Or did they need the jungle?
Boca Raton? Like what was happening?
It was like an island, and it's like there's castle in the island somewhere.
Yeah.
Didn't realize Florida had those kinds of castles.
And how meta was that to have Dracula show up at the masquerade as Dracula?
I think that's been done.
One minor error is we're not technically supposed to be able to see Dracula in the mirror, and I believe we do see him when he bites the girl.
Right.
Good catch, because I did notice that. Yeah, and she got transfixed by his eyes in the mirror.
Yeah, and then later, don't we see bats? We see animated bats. In the mirror.
But she wouldn't be able to see his eyes in the mirror. But then they went. Yeah. But they went so far, as you said, that you caught it where he's biting her in the neck in the mirror. Yeah.
But I mean, good effects all in all.
And the sets were great. I mean, the sets, you figure they had to rebuild all that because I'm sure there wasn't kicking around. I mean, some of it might have been in the warehouses at Universal, but that's one of the things I've always loved about, especially Frankenstein, is that castle and the lab.
Yes.
And then this one, you didn't really see the lab that much except towards the end, but it had a very modern lab. It wasn't very Frankenstein with the cobwebs in this kind of dungeon. Right. It was more of a modern lab with almost, things that looked like came out of the Krell lab from, Forbidden Planet.
Yeah. But to your point, Ross, moving it to Florida does kind of because both Frankenstein and Dracula had really nice European flavor to it, like solid European roots. And admittedly, moving it to Florida kind of cuts those ties. So I don't know. Chris is reminding us that the Universal monsters are still in Orlando. Chris, at Universal Studios, do they still have the monster? Like, is there a monster ride, or do they still have monster stuff? They must have it there.
I think they still do the horror nights around.
For Halloween,
which I went in the 90s when they first started doing them. Those are epic. Have you ever get to go down there? It's worth it to go.
Or watch on YouTube. They let all the attendees just kind of stand by the gate, and they let the performers. And so the two mobs staring each other down, and then they just open the gate and it's a free for all. And they're running at each other. I've never seen anything like it.
And
it's unbelievable.
It's really a lot of fun. I mean, there's just guys running around with chainsaws.
Yeah, there's guys running on chainsaws and guys on stilts.
They have different haunted houses. You know, the spook walks, you're going to call them, and they tell you there's like different levels of like how scary. Like some of them, you might want to have a heart condition.
Like bring the kids. And
I remember living in Tampa, and in the newspaper they would have ads for looking for actors for that particular week or that several weeks when they would do it, and they would say looking for people that are not afraid of rats or in.
Yeah,
they literally had this woman like in a coffin on the floor with glass over it. And they had live rats just crawling all over her, like you know, and she was like in this coffin. So they would.
If you're an attendee, the performers will touch you. They will get right up in your face. Like it's pretty intense. So
they do. It's a lot of fun. I totally recommend going.
That's going on right now then, because
probably
literally
usually they do it like I don't know if they've probably expanded it. Usually what it used to be like certain nights during the week, and they would close the park at like 5 o'clock. Kick everybody out, and then they'd reopen an hour later
for like
for the Halloween for like 3 hours or whatever it was for the Halloween Horror Nights.
Well, Dorney Park in Pennsylvania, which is a pretty at least in this area is pretty big, and they have like a special Halloween that they do throughout the month of October. And it's just usually like on the weekends, and they have, like you said, they'll have the performers. But I don't think it's to that level, though. I mean, when you're dealing with Universal and Disney, probably more Universal.
Disney does it too, but at Magic Kingdom. But it's Disney.
Yeah,
it's not scary at all.
It's like the Oogie Boogie one, But anyway, either way, it's awesome that Universal Studios is still honoring these classic old monsters that have been with us. Well, I mean, our generation with us our entire lives, but have been with us for how many years now? 80? No, 90? No.
Yeah,
this movie is 76 years old, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, they haven't changed them either. They didn't like modernize them.
No, they haven't. Well, they kind of did. They sort of tried to revise the DC monsters. Remember, because it was like Tom Cruise as the Mummy. Remember that? And it was a bunch of It was a bunch of people.
In the movies, but like if you go to Universal Studios, you see Frankenstein is Frankenstein's monster, and Dracula looks like Bela Lugosi.
Good. You know, because they're going to be 100 years old soon. You know, 1930 is the first one. So we're what 24 now. So 6 years from now they're going to be starting to turn 100 years old.
Wow,
that's insane.
That's insane.
Yeah,
that these monsters have been with us for that long. Yeah, Universal's Dark Universe. Remember the Dark Universe thing?
Yeah,
they were trying it.
I'm glad that
it tanked.
Yeah, because sometimes you just can't improve on the classic, even though we look at it and it's very dated.
But that's part of the charm.
Like watching these older movies like this, there's a certain charm. It's almost like there's a comfort level to it.
Well, they're also like the older ones, the ones from the 30s. They're like dreams. Also, they're they're atmospheric. You can't really see through the fog sometimes, and they are comforting in a way, but they're like dreams.
Yeah, they are. Although, admittedly, I did kind of enjoy Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman, and
that was interesting. And of course, Gary Oldman's anything he's in usually is pretty.
Well, he's awesome. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there have been a couple of modern day Draculas that I've been okay with.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Hey, they tried something.
They keep trying.
That's Ross's polite way of saying he didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take anything away. I thought the music was great.
Bella had the hands.
Bella had the hands.
He had the way he would it's almost like the way Nimoy could do the Vulcan mind meld. He'd always get his hands look like in a weird position,
that's
the same kind of thing. Yeah, this way of you do what I say.
They've done modern Dracula. I don't know that they have not done modern Frankenstein that I'm aware of. They've not done. Oh, they've done modern Mummy for sure.
They've done modern
Frankenstein was with Robert De Niro.
Frankenstein all the time. The Kenneth Branagh one. Yeah. Yeah, but
no, Kenneth Branagh was in the Dracula.
You know, was a modern one that was
started it. Yeah,
I always thought the Van Helsing movie was
I enjoyed the Van Helsing movie.
I liked it. I thought it was a quirky take on the lore. It had most of them, and it didn't have Mummy, and it didn't have Invisible Man, but it basically had Werewolf and Dracula. And I thought it was just good enough. It was silly enough that you couldn't take it too serious.
Yeah,
I couldn't make
it was kind of a flamboyant kind of a take on the lore.
Yeah.
So and they did Frankenstein's monster kind of really crazy because he had like the lightning in his brain, like you could see part of his brain, and there was like
yeah, that's right. That's right.
I don't know. I didn't think it was a bad movie. Of course, Hugh Jackman's pretty good at getting another actor that you gotta like in most things. So
yeah.
Anyway, well, we're getting almost to the end of the hour. What else can we say about this movie? I mean,
let me look at my notes. I think we hit all the high points.
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of got Scooby-Doo-ish at the end with them running in and out of the different doors.
Yeah,
some people love that though. Some people are like, that was the best part, and then other people are like, yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny in the part where they go into the room and they're pushing the bed up against the door, and of course that the door opens up. But the other thing is clearly the bed's on wheels, so that was not going to stop anybody to push the door out of the way.
Oh, did we talk about Lenora Aubert when she goes through the window because she wanted to do her own stunt with that?
Yeah,
and she pretty much. They said at the end no, and it was like, I guess it was like, what was it, like sugar glass?
Where it's not really yeah.
But what happened was, I guess the stunt person that they used, there was something with the brace, and it's good that she wound up not doing it. But
she got hurt. Yeah,
again, no union back then.
Right.
Yeah, what an undignified ending for that character, though. Yeah, I mean, she's a scientist.
Yeah,
but it was even worse ending for Bella Karloff because he got turned into a bat, and the Wolfman like literally grabbed him and jumped in the water with him.
Yeah, and what is that about? I mean, I guess
so they both drowned?
Vampires, they're not supposed to be able to cross running water. Maybe he's immobilized in the ocean. I don't know, but the Wolfman wouldn't be dead unless he hit a rock or something. Who knows?
Yeah, Wolfman could just doggy paddle.
Doggy paddle.
There's the argument. There's an argument. If can a werewolf swim because dogs inherently know how to swim, but if the human version doesn't know how to swim, does the werewolf know how to swim?
Yeah. Oh, also, did you guys notice that it was a full moon 3 nights in a row in this movie?
I missed
every single night. He's like, I'm going to turn to a werewolf tonight. You got to be in the room.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm like, wasn't that last night? We're on.
It seems like he only turns into it when he sees the full moon. It could be out there, but until he notices it.
Whatever. It was like every night. And I'm like, are we not waxing, waning? What's happening? I don't know.
Maybe because the first time was in London and it was only full over.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
No, I don't know that they thought it through.
I really think you're drilling down a little too much for this movie.
Did you think Costello was going to go back into the hotel room the second time when he took the apple? Did you think he was going to open the door and go back and give it?
Yeah.
So it's like it's not that kind of movie, kid.
It definitely isn't.
So, like I said, I enjoyed this. I thought it was a good pick for our group because kind of fits the older stuff that you like to do, Roy. And,
it definitely does.
I hadn't done it, and we hadn't done it. I honestly had thought you guys did this already.
I thought you done it.
No, and I'll tell you something, though. I am, and I'm just coming clean here. I am not. I mean, Abbott and Costello holds a special place for me because of the nostalgia piece of it, because of just going to my grandparents, and it was always on Sundays, and the silliness and the slapstick kind of humor. So it brings back a lot of memories in regards to that. But as far as being a huge fan of that, I enjoyed this movie more so than the other ones that I've seen bits and pieces. But this is the first time I actually saw this from beginning to end. So
really,
yeah. Truth be told,
it's very entertaining, but it doesn't really highlight Abbott and Costello at quote unquote their most characteristic, or I was going to say their best, but their most characteristic. Like you say, who's on first? There's that patter and the rhythm they get into. They've got a number of routines like that, and they don't really get into that so much in this one.
No, I would agree. This is not their best work.
I mean, it's one of their better movies.
Yeah,
it's actually what they're best known for.
Yeah, it's one of their better movies, but it doesn't have their burlesque shtick that they've honed over decades.
Yeah, Chris LaRoche is saying he's more of a Stan and Ollie guy.
Interesting too.
I'm more of a Marx Brothers guy. Yeah.
In regards to that, I read that I guess Lou Costello actually was in one of the Oliver Laurel Hardy movies. I guess he was in a ringside seat. I forget which movie it was.
Yes,
It was
before he became famous. Yeah. Before he became famous. In fact, it's interesting. I remembered as we were preparing for this in the 70s, there was a TV movie called Bud and Lou that had Buddy Hackett as Lou Costello, and as Bud Abbott, it was Harvey Korman.
Wow.
And it is now on YouTube. I checked, and somebody put it up a few months ago, so you can watch it. But I remember watching it back in the 70s.
That would be great to watch. Two legends right there.
And then what was the Laurel and Hardy dynamic? Basically the same deal, right? The one tall, thin one, the one shorter, more portly one.
Yeah, but they have a gentler edge, I think, to them.
I think they were a little bit more physical comedy.
Wasn't one of them
with a lot of the.
Well, they came out through silence. Well, Stan Laurel was British, and Oliver Hardy was American. But they came out through the silence, like you said. So it was a lot of physical humor, and their shtick was they used to be described as two minds without a single thought. You know what I mean? Oliver Hardy always thought he was so smart, and he was always inflated, but he was just as dumb as Stan was. But they were adorable. Everybody adored them. You know, they were like
the March of the Wooden Soldiers at Christmas time. That was a big classic on Channel 11. They used to show that all the time growing up.
We're here. You know, what's his name? Abbott is always very slick. You know, he's the confidence guy. You know, and Lou's the fall guy, the patsy, the comic.
Yeah, he never.
Who's the everyman? Who's
never
just
believes, whatever he sees. And it's a lot of that same comedy we've seen. It's coming.
Right.
The coffin opens. We see Dracula.
Yeah.
Bud comes in.
A lot of it depends on everyone, on Lou seeing things and nobody else seeing it for a while. A lot of the comedy depends on that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It was a good choice, though. This was a fun choice.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with something that was kind of light.
Yeah, definitely.
We've never gone back this far. I love movies of the 30s and 40s, but I always had this kind of fantasy where I do like a pappy sci-fi show where it's all 30s and 40s, 20, 30s and 40s, because Roy does 50s, 60s, 70s. You guys do.
This is our second.
Do it because these are our roots. I mean, this is where the stuff from the 20s, 30s, and 40s is what's built upon that gives us what we have today.
Yeah. Well, one, I like the stuff.
All that stuff.
I would not commit to a weekly thing, And who would do it with me? Nobody.
I could learn about old stuff.
Yeah.
Like I told you, I wanted to do Nosferatu for this, or actually one of the original 1930. When was Frankenstein? 31 or 38? I really wanted to do one of the original movies, and then was like, let's soften it up a little. So
Ross's cousin Joe, actually, I mean, he's really into that film as well too, because that film was in German, wasn't it?
It was filmed in Germany. It's silent, but
I've never actually seen all of
Nosferatu with the long finger.
I sat in on because
the original Frankenstein, for that matter,
German literature class, and I sat in on that one at the University of Utah when he was teaching to his students, and it was centered around that movie. But and he, of course, taught it in German. So
and they're remaking it again. It's coming out at Christmas. The new Robert Eggers version. Yeah, what a release date, huh?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, this thing was released in July or June. Some incredibly early time that I was like, why did you?
I don't think they really connected this stuff to Halloween then.
They were not
I don't think Halloween was very, very oriented to kids in that era. It wasn't adults. I don't think really. At least the feeling I got from my parents and stuff, like Halloween was not, once you were past the age of 12 or whatever, it was pretty much.
It's different today.
Yeah. Today, everybody, don't look at us. I mean,
well, yeah.
We just never grow up. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
We look forward to this every year.
June. They released this in June. Yeah, I think that's a missed opportunity.
Well, it still clearly did well. So
74 and a half years ago, just about. Wow.
I mean, lots of horror movies get released all times of the year. So I don't know why you feel that they all have to be released at Halloween.
Because that's the scary time of year.
Oh, okay.
Not anymore.
No, I guess
not. Scary.
I guess not.
November scary. January scary.
March Madness.
Hope it doesn't come to that.
Every Mother's Day.
Oh, cute.
Anyway,
Excuse me.
oh my goodness. Well, it is 8:00. We like to try to be on time, so I don't.
Unlike us.
Well, we gotta have our thing, Roy. We start on time, we end on time. That's our thing.
Well, there you go.
That's literally our only claim to fame. We do nothing else.
We don't do anything else well, but
my response to that, Mike, is this.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? That's fine.
Let's hear it, Roy.
Super quick, Phil on WUSB Stony Brook will be talking with Laura Mead, the lead singer of band Is. That's IZZ Is. And he will be on tomorrow at 4. And I think she's going to perform live for him on the air, which will be super exciting. Roy, you finally doing Something Wicked This Way Come?
Yes, we're going to be doing Something Wicked This Way Comes this Sunday, which is going to be at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, because we are actually turning the clocks back this weekend.
Oh, that's right.
So just as a reminder to everybody out there, so on Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. In fact, plug to my son, to Ryan. He's running in the New York City Marathon on Sunday. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, at least he gets an extra hour of sleep for that. So
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, thanks for the plug, guys.
I love that movie. So yeah, I'm super excited that you're finally going to get to it.
Yeah, it's a great film. The last time I had seen it actually was in the theater too.
Oh, really?
I can't remember. I want to say it was the 80s when it came out.
It was like the first time I ever saw Jonathan Pryce. He's
great.
Yeah. And Jason Robards in that. Oh, it's a great movie.
Great cast.
I don't know what we're doing next week, as usual.
No, it'll be the day after the election, so I don't know what's going to happen.
We'll try to come up with something appropriate.
Yeah, like Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Let's hope that's not going to be the theme. All right. On that note, I will say good night. Thank you both for coming.
Yes. Of course, thank you for having us.
So much for having us.
Yeah, this is so much. We should do more crossover stuff. It's fun.
Yeah,
we be a holiday. But good conversation. I think everybody enjoyed it. Again, thanks for coming. And then, as always, live long and prosper. And may the force be with you always. Good night, folks.
Good night.
I'm gonna find the end.